As much as we love Ash and his Pokemon, he wouldn't be able to get far without the help of his friends. Today, we'll be looking at two of his longest companions and their Pokemon, giving up one fact about each one of them. First, we'll be looking at Misty's Pokemon. Misty is one of Ash's longest companions and possibly his best friend. She's known Ash the longest and has spent the most time with him. Now then, let's start this list off with, wow, starting off strong, huh? We'll be looking at the Gyarados that Misty had captured all the way in the episode of Pokemon Chronicles Cerulean Blues. Misty had saved a rampaging Gyarados that was in the gym's pool. Aside from being scared of Gyarados as a child, she got rid of her phobia and captured said Gyarados. With this action, this particular Pokemon is the very first one that was captured by a main character of the anime outside of the anime, cause he does show up again. So great job, Gyarados! While she was helping Ash and Tracy in the episode The Stun Spore Detour, she had come across a Poliwag and had essentially taken it as her own and added the little fella to her team. This Poliwag would eventually evolve from that to a Poliwhirl, and then later into a Politoed. Now here's something interesting about this guy. Politoed is known to be one of the first Pokemon throughout the series to have its full evolution be seen in the anime. We literally got to see this little guy grow up before our eyes. They grow up so fast. Staryu, or yeah, it's what I like to call him anyway, is one of Misty's longest kept Pokemon in the entire series. This little guy is loyal and dependable while also being a great asset to Misty, though it's actually stated that we have no idea what the gender of Staryu is. Being one of the first Pokemon who companion Ash and the gang to have their gender be a total mystery. Yeah, nothing really interesting happens with Staryu in the series. Like Staryu, Starmie is Misty's most appreciated and loyal Pokemon, though Starmie doesn't really have a lot to do. Misty usually uses Staryu when things get rough, which is strange since Starmie is a fully evolved Pokemon. But not only that, Starmie here is the very first Psychic-type Pokemon to ever be owned by either Ash or the gang, which makes their absence even more strange to say the least. Oof, poor guy. Clauncher didn't really have a lot to do in the series, being caught by Misty in the episode of Pokemon Journeys, A Fated Face-Off. But again, didn't really get to do much in the series as it was wrapping up. Though one interesting thing about Clauncher is that he is the final Pokemon to be caught by one of Ash's friends. Not really what I'd expect for Misty to capture as her final Pokemon, but not a bad pick. Good job, Clauncher. Pokemon that Misty has on rotation as of writing this script, but still a pretty big deal to Misty. Corsola was captured in the episode A Corsola Caper. This Corsola is a fun-loving and happy-go-lucky Pokemon that gets hugged and cuddled by Misty. Kinda reminds me of another Pokemon she has, but we'll get to that one later. But Corsola didn't come in willy-nilly. This was the only Pokemon that Misty had caught that had actually battled with Misty to be captured. Gotta give credit where credit's due for Corsola. Aw man. Here we go. Misty's Goldeen isn't really used all that much, and that's for good reason, being infamous for being completely useless on land. It makes me question Misty's experience from time to time. In fact, Goldeen had actually been used mostly for gags. For example, Goldeen had not used an attack whatsoever from her debut in the anime till 89 episodes later, where she was used in the episode Bye Bye Psyduck. Man. Goldeen really didn't strike gold with that one, huh? Puns! This Pokemon is actually never seen in the main series, so I debated even adding them to the list. But I added them because of the fact that he's the only Pokemon in the main cast that's never seen in the main series. So, yeah. Sorry, pal. This Pokemon hasn't really done much, being captured by Misty due to how cute it was and all that. She constantly babies the Pokemon and is very protective of them. The one thing I can't say is that this was the first Pokemon that she caught throughout the series. That's it. Next, yet another Pokemon caught by Misty due to cute privilege. Heck, I didn't even know she caught an Azurill until writing the script. So anyway, Azurill, as you can see, isn't fitting to a specific motif that Misty has had throughout the series. Azurill is the only Pokemon that isn't a water-type Pokemon. I'd also add the fact that this is the only Pokemon that's related to another companion's Pokemon. But this is one fact about Misty and Brock's Pokemon, not two. So just pick a fact, because that's the only interesting thing about Azurill. Oh yeah! Here we go. Everyone's favorite Pokemon of Misty's is her Psyduck. Though Psyduck is a Pokemon of Misty's that isn't necessarily the biggest or strongest, he has a heart of gold and loves Misty greatly. He always gets to go in and help out whenever he needs to. And though Misty and him fight a lot, she adores her Psyduck like all her Pokemon. Now, what to say about Psyduck that isn't really well known? Well, it took this guy over a whopping 942 episodes in order to learn Water Gun. You know the saying, slow and steady usually wins the race. Well, consider Psyduck the example, the painfully slow example. Togepi/Togetic is without a doubt the baby of Misty's catalog of Pokemon. Though when evolved into Togetic, she had to sadly let them go, as Togetic had left to protect the other Togepi and leave Misty. A very sad tale of someone who loved her Pokemon so much and shared the same admiration for their master. Truly a special moment in the series. Now Togetic is an interesting case, because Togetic is the only character, Pokemon, trainer, etc., who didn't show up for the Pokemon Journeys anime due to them being sent to another dimension. Man, just proving friendships, no matter where you are and how far you've gone, will never truly die. Wow, that was a real doozy. Misty sure did have a few great Pokemon for this adventure she had, didn't she? But we got one more friend to look at today. So let's get a look at Brock, our hopeless romantic who loves taking care of Pokemon as much as he does the ladies. Speaking of that love for Pokemon, let's see what our favorite Pokemon breeders' own Pokemon have in store for us. Starting with, Marshtomp is a Pokemon I completely forgot Brock had. You see, this was a period of Pokemon where I stopped watching. What? Okay, I'm sorry I didn't watch all of Pokemon all the time, but please don't click off the video. Marshtomp is the first Pokemon that's not owned by Ash to be a starter owned by a companion. Not only that, but he's the only starter Pokemon that's owned by Brock specifically. Not a bad way to start Brock's section of the list. Comfey's not really seen all that much, if at all, so we'll get them out of the way. They're practically only seen in one episode, but something interesting about them is that they're the first Pokemon that was captured by one of Ash's companions while being retired from the main cast position. Not super interesting, but it's something I guess. Vulpix is a Pokemon that was given to Brock by Susie early in the show's history, but was given back to Susie in the episode Beauty and the Breeder. Adding to this, according to Brock, Vulpix is the only Pokemon in the series not to be owned by a main character. Though I mean, he did catch her, so I mean technically she's his, right? Never mind. Let's just get to the others. Next up is Fortress, a Pokemon who we could describe as one shell of a guy. Fortress is a Pokemon that joined Brock back when he was in Pineco in the episode Going Apricorn. Now most people when thinking about Brock think about his Onix or his Geodude or even Krogunk, who we'll get to later in the video. Fortress is the Pokemon who has been in Brock's party the longest. Not only that, but he's been there the longest of any main character in the series next to Pikachu with Ash. Now that right there is fascinating. Blissey was an egg that Brock had back in the episode All Dressed Up with Somewhere to Go. They would later hatch into a Happiny, then evolve to a Chansey, and then finally into Blissey. Going through her evolution is an entire list of fun facts of their own, as Blissey isn't really used all that much aside from a few gags and some battles here and there. But with each evolution, she's the only Pokemon to have been owned by a main character with 3 evolution stages introduced in 3 different generations. Chansey making their debut in Gen 1, Blissey being introduced as soon as Gen 2, and then their Happiny evolution all the way in Gen 4. Ludicolo was introduced as a Lotad in the episode The Lotad Lowdown, and later in the series would have a full evolution when evolving to Lombre and Ludicolo respectively. This silly, fun-loving goof has an interesting fact about his typing. He's the first out of any of Ash's friends to be caught and be a grass type. Not too bad of a catch for our favorite breeder. Crobat was owned by Brock all the way back from when they were a Zubat early on in the series. Not a lot to say here, except for the fact that this was the first main character-owned Pokemon to ever evolve via friendship. Man, friendship really is a powerful thing. I wonder if you could power a car with friendship. Oh yeah, love Sudowoodo. He was one of my favorites growing up, as his design from a small, whiny crybaby as a Bonsly to a fun-loving lanky dude with Sudowoodo was really needed for the show. Which is sad to say, this is the only Pokemon that Brock caught on screen via a Pokemon battle. But seeing what he was before, yeah, I don't care how annoying Bonsly is. I'm not a fan of beating up something that could be seen as a kid. Like, come on, he's a crybaby and he doesn't have arms? Life's unfair. So, embarrassing to admit, but when I was younger, I had always thought that the whole thing with Onix and Geodude was a Staryu and Starmie situation. And by that, I meant that I thought Geodude was the pre-evolution of Onix. That wasn't the case. Man, the face I had when I found out was just hilarious. Okay. So interesting thing about Geodude is that despite being with Brock for a good 156 episodes in the Johto arc, he had only physically appeared in 13 episodes of that arc. Only 13! Man, that stinks. Back when Steelix was an Onix, this was the first Pokemon that Brock had required all the way through Season 1. But not gonna lie, he wasn't really my favorite Pokemon in the series. In fact, I found him kind of boring. Although what isn't boring is the fact that Steelix over here has the most moves throughout all his Pokemon, with 11 total moves in his disposal. I mean, he isn't my favorite Pokemon, but he's someone's, I think. Krogunk, the most interesting of all of Brock's Pokemon, and one that seems to be the first Pokemon that I think of when I think about Brock, mostly due to his famous poison jab whenever Brock flirts with a girl. Even though they have this strange comedy thing going on, the two are inseparable, being seen as some of the best Pokemon/master duos in the series. In fact, out of every single Pokemon Ash's friends have had in the series, they aren't ones that just simply walk around with their trainers. Krogunk is shown the most with a total of 99 episodes throughout the entire series. Holy cow, that's a lot of poison jabs. Sorry, Brock. Looks like you'll be getting a date with the ER doctor and not Nurse Joy. Wow, that was a lot of Pokemon to talk about. With a total of 23 Pokemon to speak of, Ash may have the most Pokemon in the series, but his friends did a decent job collecting their Pokemon as well. What did you guys think of the video? Did you find these facts interesting? Were there some we missed? Go down in the comments below and talk about what we might have missed, or even who your favorite Pokemon from Brock or Misty could be, and why. Engagement is always helpful, so be sure to like the video if you enjoyed, share this with your friends, and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos from us at Pokestar. That's it for me. I'll see you next time. Bye!